What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the hater, up in this mug, and it's time for a late and great Raw review. I'm talking about the review. The episode was anything less than great. You understand what I'm saying? The hater's almost done with this hellish week, which means that I'm almost back on track. The energy is coming through, and we're back to review Raw segment by segment. All right. The show starts out as it does every week. They tell us who's here tonight to tell us who's not here tonight, which is obviously more important because none of the stars are here, right? Now, I will say this, for Raw, as long as Rollins is there, he's like the star of Raw now. You can't ask for much more. Roman Reigns, CUCK, these guys are technically on SmackDown. They're not going to be there. Raw is clearly the B show, which was weird because I thought once they got to Netflix, it'd be the A show again, but then the Netflix ratings have been abysmal. So, in order to keep someone happy, they want to keep USA happy with SmackDown and put all the stars there. Raw is a complete afterthought, as is this review, coincidentally. Basically, the show starts out, CM Punk comes out. That's kind of nice. We don't see him very often. And basically, he says that since WrestleMania, he's been bitching and crying and pissing himself to sleep for weeks, but now he's back, right? What the hell am I supposed to do with that? Basically, CM Punk just says that he's been licking his wounds for weeks. Fucking get over it. I understand he's a little bitch, but come on, you got to be a man about it, right? Then he says, the one person I'm the most mad at, and immediately I'm thinking to myself, he's going to say himself. Then this asshole takes a dramatic pause, and he's like, the person I'm the most mad at is me. And it's like, shut the fuck up. Like, we all knew you were going to say that, you fucking cliche CM Punk. More like cliche man Punk, you know what I'm saying? So he says that. Paul Heyman comes out. He says, Paul Heyman, if you get in this ring, it'll be the last thing you do, the last words you say, right? CM Punk also says Uso warned him about Paul Heyman. Warned him about what? Jey Uso was buddy-buddy with Paul Heyman literally until WrestleMania. Paul Heyman was a good guy who was aligned with his cousin until WrestleMania. Jey Uso also should feel betrayed. But for some reason, out of everyone that was surrounded by Heyman, Jey Uso recognized that Heyman is a rat bastard. What about the fact that your own family beat your ass with chairs, Doesn't make any sense. They just want to put Jey Uso in here to make him sound like smart and, in tune to justify the fact that he's now the world heavyweight champion, Anyways, as I said, Heyman comes out and then eventually so does Seth Cuckin' Rollins. That's right. Seth Cuckin' Rollins. That's the new epithet that I'm throwing on Seth Rollins now. Cucks, deal with it. Basically, everyone says it'll be everyone's last words, but after a brawl, everyone survives to speak again. Uso and Zayn come out to help CM Punk. I mean, I don't know why. Michael's like, payback, but it's like, why are you helping CM Punk? CM Punk hasn't been like a friend to either of these guys. And that's kind of an important point because during Seth Rollins' promo, which is the exact same promo he cut the Raw after WrestleMania, he once again lays out the argument that that CM Punk cuckers, that CM Punk didn't, get betrayed by Paul Heyman, which honestly is a good point. Yeah, Paul Heyman was in his corner, but he's not like his manager, right? Like CM Punk effectively forced Paul Heyman to do this. Right? What about that part? Nobody's talking about that part, right? And that's kind of the theme of this episode and my current rant, is that a lot of things happen on WWE, especially on Raw, that are never explained. You know what I mean? Or they're explained with these loose explanations, right? So for example, what about the fact that Paul Heyman was put in a very difficult position by CM Punk? CM Punk, being the selfish narcissist that he is, basically said, hey, Paul Heyman, why don't you betray your client who in kayfabe pays the bills, right? Why don't you betray your client and be my manager for a day because that's what I want, right? You know what I mean? That coupled with the fact that nobody saved Heyman from the beating that Solo Sikoa gave him, which is customary. It's customary for the wrestler to protect his manager. Remember when John Cena was going to beat up Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar just returned out of nowhere? And he was like, relax, Paul. Picks up Cena F5, just like that. You know what I mean? That's what we want to see, cucks. But anyways, it is what it is. this is not like a very intelligent storyline, so I'm not going to waste any more of my time or yours trying to make any sense out of it. Next up, we have Penta El Jobber Miedo. He comes up. Nobody cares about Penta, right? I'm putting Penta in the category with Rey Fenix, whose theme music starts with the word animal. Like, what the fuck? Shut the fuck up, you know? Like, that's what everyone should say, right? Like, when you see like a Rusev promo, don't you just think to yourself, like, shut the fuck up, bro? You know, shut the fuck up. I'm here to redeem. I'm here to redeem. I did it for The Rock. Shut your mouth. You know what I'm saying? Nobody cares, right? More on that a little bit later. Then, after Penta comes out, Pat McAfee comes out late for no reason. He gets the entrance, the full Monty. He joins the commentary team, says he was in a fight with Gunther. He botches, like, you know, the first line that he has. Pat McAfee is so overexposed. There's nothing entertaining about this guy, you know? I mean, maybe he's entertaining on a ESPN football level, if we're being completely honest, but he is not entertaining on a wrestling level. Simple as that. Now, to be fair, neither are any of the real wrestlers that we have today, but c'est la vie, cucks. You know, the reality is, back in the day, wrestling was the epitome of entertainment, and there was no way in hell, and The Rock means no way in hell, that you'd ever have, like, I don't know, some NFL, like, nobody, like Pat McAfee, pretend to be cool other than on the football field. Like, nobody gave a shit. You know what I mean? Like, we actually had cool people on TV. Now we have a bunch of dorks, so by comparison, Pat McAfee looks cool, but he's not. Anyways, with that being said, it's Gable versus Penta. Michael Cole and Pat McAfee do their back and forth about whether or not Chad Gable is El Grande Americano. This is incredibly stupid because it's not compelling at all. Nobody cares fundamentally. Let's just say tomorrow or next week on Raw, like El Grande Americano wrestles, I don't know, the returning Sin Cara. And Sin Cara unmasks him, and it turns out that it's not Chad Gable, but it's like Tozawa or something. Would anyone give a shit? Like, if the reveal was, let's say, that El Grande Americano is, you know, fucking anybody but Chad Gable, right? Like, it's S.A. Rios. It's his return, right? Would anyone care? You know, nobody would care if it is or it isn't Chad Gable, because Chad Gable is an undercard jobber nobody, and so is El Grande Americano. You know, obviously Pentagon wins. It's obvious because clearly the feud is going to be with El Grande Americano, who's probably going to win the feud, but nobody cares, right? This is just the undercard. You know, the undercard never harms anybody, but it does when it's overexposed. After this, the hater decided to permanently, well, maybe not permanently, things could change, put Pat McAfee on the ban list, meaning that any Pat McAfee segment is going to get skipped. There was one right after the match, or maybe before, or no, it was right after the match, because they pretty much showed the entire highlights of Gunther versus Pat McAfee. Remember when back in the day, they wouldn't do that, right? They would like show like a 2-second clip and then they would like freeze it. And then they were like, buy the pay-per-view and watch it like on repeat or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Nowadays, they know nobody's going to fucking go watch it. If you haven't watched it now, they know through the metrics that nobody's going to go back to watch that shit. So they're like, here's what the fuck happened. You know, we don't want you to like miss out because we know nobody gave a flying fuck when it happened, right? So basically, then Pat McAfee gives some sort of speech. I skipped it entirely, given that he's on the ban list. I don't give a fuck what Pat McAfee has to say. He's never entertained me, except for that one match with Adam Cole. Now, after this, we have a Zayn and Punk talk backstage. Looky, milk and cookie. As I've said before, Sami Zayn is on the ban list, so this segment was skipped. You know what I'm saying? I skipped it like a bitch. Anyways, after this, the New Day come out. They go on commentary, right? They do their thing. It's not as good as last time. It's American Made versus the War Raiders. New Day costs the match for the War Raiders, with whom they're still in a feud. The Creeds hit the Doomsday Brutus Ball, which is a boring-ass finisher. It's unique, I guess. But I will say this, the Creed brothers are probably the most legit tag team in WWE. They're probably the most legit tag team in WWE history, if we're being honest, right? There's no tag team that I can think of, except for maybe like, you know, LOD or like the Acolytes or the Dudleys, just based on like toughness, that would ever have a chance at beating them up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these guys are like, they're complete hosses, you know what I mean? They really are like as close to world-class wrestlers as it gets, and they're crazy athletic. So if you had them against like the Street Profits, they would like fucking murder them in 10 seconds. I mean, the War Raiders would have a shot because they're fat, basically, right? But the New Day, like Fraxium, you know, I can't believe these guys have never been tag team champions. They're both like amazing wrestlers too. So it is what it is. I hope one day they get it. Then Rollins talks to Braun in the back like Braun is a lackey. Now here's the thing. why is Braun a lackey, right? Instead of explaining why Paul Heyman is pissed, all of a sudden Paul Heyman is like the central figure in wrestling. For the longest time, Paul Heyman was just a manager, meaning he had absolutely no bearing at all on the show, and periodically he'd betray somebody, and that would be the beginning and the end of his contributions. But now, like, the plan as to why Seth Rollins, was joined by Paul Heyman, all centers around Paul Heyman. Fine, that's fine, but why is Bron Breakker there, right? What does he stand to gain from this? Bron Breakker was already on his way to be a champion, right? This is fundamentally different from, let's say, Randy Orton and Batista, who were complete nobodies when they joined WWE. Randy Orton was an undercard jobber, and Batista was Devon's lackey, called the Deacon Batista, which was cool, in my opinion, but it makes sense that they would join Triple H and Ric Flair because they have nothing better to do. Bron Breakker was kicking ass for years. But anyways, that's fine. I just wish that at some point they would actually explain why Bron Breakker has aligned with Seth Rollins. I'd like to know, motherfucks. So that happened. Then eventually Uso comes out, Jey Uso that is, picks up a kid and dances with him. They do a little yeet arm thing, right? That was cool. I like that. I'm sure the kid's going to remember that for like the rest of his life, because he's obviously a big fan now. I mean, obviously when the kid's like 18, he's going to be ashamed of this. He's going to be like, holy shit, like, I thought it was as cool as like Stone Cold, but it was just Jey Uso. But nevertheless, it's a good moment for the kid, and it's a very nice thing for Jey Uso to do. Jey, who's also looking a bit more swole than usual, says that Logan is talking smack, and Jey will beat him at Saturday night mid-card. Now, Logan Paul would absolutely brutalize Jey Uso in a fight, obviously, right? Because he actually has actual combat experience in terms of like, combat sports, not like going to war or anything. And he's more athletic than him. So, in my opinion, Logan Paul should win, but they're not going to pull the trigger with him yet. Then Gunther comes out and everyone goes to sleep. Gunther is so close, motherfucks, to being on the ban list. Gunther comes out and says, I will get the winner of you and Logan Paul. And he's so fucking boring and monotone that I cannot stand this fucking asshole anymore. Also, he didn't come out in a suit. He came out wearing like regular clothes. He's just another regular guy wrestler, And then Jey Uso says, yo, I beat your ass once, I'm going to beat you again. Plain and simple, cuck. Then Jey Uso throws out his new catchphrase, which he's been trying to get over, and it's finally over, which goes a little bit something like this. 4 letters, 1 word, cuck. You know what I'm saying? That's what Jey Uso's catchphrase is. It's just another way of saying yeet. Also, what the fuck does yeet mean in this context, right? Because to yeet is to discard something, right? But what does it mean in this context? Like, when he says yeet, what does he mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's fucking stupid as shit. But anyways, I do like Jey Uso for what he is. You know what I mean? I'm starting to get it, if you will, right? I enjoy when Jey Uso comes out more than I do when Seth Rollins comes out, for example, because I believe Jey Uso is more entertaining. So there you have it. Good for Jey Uso. After this, they do a Sabu like promo type of thing, like a eulogy, like a rest in peace type of thing, which is cool. Sabu was awesome, obviously. Sabu was just entertaining, super unique. He should have gotten more. Like, imagine, like, Sabu right now, you know what I mean? Like, they'd probably put him in, like, a Penta, like, Chad Gable role. But, like, imagine how much cooler he would be than those two dorks, right? Then we go into an interview with Ludwig Kaiser, who obviously everyone forgot was still in this company. The interview is basically about how much of a jobber he is and how he never wrestles, right? And the interviewer, whose name I don't know, nor do I care to know, she basically says, Ludwig, you haven't wrestled in a while. Then some scuffling, some scuttlebutt happens in the back. And the interviewer's like, maybe we'll talk about this later, Ludwig, meaning that nobody gives a flying fuck, or like what the answer to that is, right? If the question to Ludwig Kaiser is, why haven't you wrestled anymore? The correct answer to that question is, shut the fuck up, Ludwig Kaiser. Nobody gives a flying fuck. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. We pan to what happened, which was right next to these people. And basically, Bron Breakker is attacking Jey. Pause, motherfucks. I have to say something about this. This really pissed me off. Not because, like, of what happened, because I could give a shit. That doesn't make any difference to me. But the reality is this. For all intents and purposes, we can't say that Bron Breakker is anything more than a mid-card jobber at this point, right? Maybe not a mid-card jobber, but definitely a mid-carder, right? And the mid-carder just attacked the purported World Heavyweight Champion. Now, granted, I recognize that the World Heavyweight title is completely meaningless. It's on par with the Intercontinental title in the fact that they're both completely irrelevant titles that nobody cares about. For a minute, while I was watching the show, I was like, who's the Intercontinental Champion? I had to think before I got to Dominic. It's like, I don't care at all about who the Intercontinental Champion is. Whereas at a certain point, I cared a lot, motherfuckers. So there you have it, right? Nobody cares about this world title, but nevertheless, it is presented as a world title, right? So this would be the equivalent of, let's say, like The Undertaker was champion when he cut his hair short, you know? Imagine if, like, Shelton Benjamin just attacks The Undertaker backstage. You know, like it's like the mid-carder back then wouldn't have the balls to attack The Undertaker, right? Just because they're so far apart in the card, right? So it would make no sense for, like, I don't know, like Val Venus, let's say, to attack, you know, Stone Cold, right? Because Stone Cold would just beat his ass, right? There's no scenario that Val Venus attacks Stone Cold backstage and then Val Venus wins, right? In any capacity, right? But because it's Jey Uso and because it's Bron Breakker, I guess it makes a little bit of sense, but still, it makes the champion look weak. Why didn't Seth Rollins attack him himself? Seth Rollins is supposed to be like, you know, he's the Triple H of this new group, and Bron Breakker is the Batista. So it didn't make any sense. Remember that time when like Batista was trying to attack Kane and he failed and eventually he got him, you know? And like Batista would try to attack Goldberg, but like they were too far up on the card, right? They're too far apart. So like if Goldberg and Batista had a match, it would be like a squash match, right? But if Jey Uso and Bron Breakker had a match, which they have had, right? They're like 1-1, you know? Like the Intercontinental Champion, like, you know, sorry, the former Intercontinental Champion, or the fuck, yeah, former, he beat Jey Uso for the title. So why doesn't he just say, hey, I want to fight Uso for the title? Why is he being a lackey? Anyways, it is what it is. After this, we've got Finn Balor versus AJ. Earlier in the night, they showed Judgment Day coming into the arena looking like complete dorks. You know what I mean? This is completely unrelated to the Judgment Day that Edge started with Damian Priest. It's a completely different group. They should just call themselves like the Rascals 2.0 because they basically are the Rascals. It's a bunch of dorks that like hanging out in a clubhouse. You know what I mean? It's very weird. At least with the Rascals, it's like tongue-in-cheek. You know, they're like potheads, I guess, or whatever. They're like, you know, a bunch of rascals. I mean, the best way to put it, right? The match is okay, but the problem with the match is that nobody could possibly care whether or not Finn Balor gets a win or gets a loss. And by virtue of that, likewise, nobody could ever give a flying rat's ass if AJ Styles beats Finn Balor. Beating Finn Balor is like beating Ludwig Kaiser. Like, nobody cares at all, you know? It doesn't bump you up the card, and if you lose to him, it bumps you all the way down because you just lost to, like, the biggest jobber ever. Like, when was the last time Finn Balor won a singles match? I think it's been like years, you know? Finn Balor's complete shit, you know? Like, he was supposed to be this big deal, this big game changer, you know? And that's why when I look at someone like Obafemi or Tony D'Angelo, I think to myself, this has Finn Balor written all over it, you know? Everyone thinks it's going to be a massive, like, the person's going to be a massive star or Karrion Kross written all over it. And then, like, everyone is simultaneously surprised when it turns out that that's not the case, right? It's very, very fucking awesome, you know what I mean? That I'm right, that is, right? Then we get a Rusev promo. Like, Rusev, he's not on the ban list because he just came back, but the Rusev promos are definitely on the ban list. I skipped this motherfucker so quick, it's not even funny. I have no interest in hearing what Rusev has to say. And quite frankly, if you do, you might be a little retarded. There's absolutely nothing that has ever come out of Rusev's mouth that has led me to believe that I want to hear more things come out of Rusev's mouth. It's just not the case, motherfuckers. I don't care that he's the Redeemer. I don't care that he's here to kick ass. I don't care at all. If you're not wrestling, then I don't give a fuck. This has Penta El Cero Miedo written all over it. Rusev is already on the way out, if you ask me, right? Like, this has Obafemi written all over it, motherfuckers. The same shit's gonna happen. He's gonna have like a nice little run. Before you know it, he'll be dropping matches to like probably Obafemi when he debuts or something like that, right? And that's it. The same thing's going to happen to Obafemi, and then we can have the Oba and Rusev connection, Rusev Date 2.0, which is going to require Rusev to go back on his word that he's going to take himself seriously, because let's be honest, this and Obafemi has Tensai written all over. Remember Tensai, motherfuckers? A lot of people were like, oh, Tensai's going to get a massive push. I'm like, it's fucking Albert pretending to be Japanese, and now he's fatter than before. Albert, who had a cool look back in the day, couldn't cut it. Now, to be fair, he was surrounded by like Stone Cold and The Rock, and and even then he did stand out, right? But he was in good shape. He was young. He didn't have like a racially humiliating gimmick. You know what I mean? And now he has all those things, and nobody gives a flying fuck. You know? So that's what I say about Rusev, Obafemi, Tony D'Angelo. All of this shit has Tensai written all over it, motherfucks. Then we got a vignette, like a promo backstage, where Tozawa, I think he wants Rusev. Natalia's hanging out with him too now. It's Maxine, Natalia, and Tozawa. Natalia says he can beat him. Adam Pearce says, you're not medically cleared. Tozawa says, I will be soon. And he says, and when you are, big balls to you, kid. Then Sheamus appears out of nowhere with a shillelagh, dressed like a complete Irish stereotype. It is what it is, but I don't know why Sheamus does this to himself. Sheamus is like uniquely cool, you know? He doesn't have to lean into the Irish stereotype thing, which he leans into very heavily. I get it, he's Irish, but you don't have to have everything about you be about the fact that you're Irish, you know? Like, for example, his finisher is called the bro kick. That little thing that he does where he hits the guy in the chest, 10 beats of the bodhrán or whatever the fuck, some Irish drum. Just shut the fuck up. Just call it 10 beats of the drum. You know what I mean? Oh, the bodhrán, we get it. He's Irish, motherfucks. And then for some reason, Sheamus, nobody's ever talked about this really, but for some reason, Sheamus has this weird affinity with the word fella, right? He just screams out fella for like no reason whatsoever. Who the fuck's he talking about, you know? This is like as stupid as Yeet. Like before he does the kick now, he's like, fella, and then he kicks. When he comes out to his entrance, he's just like screaming, fella. Like it's like they're trying to make this a catchphrase, but like, what the hell is he saying? Anyways, that happens. Sheamus then tells Adam Pearce that he'd like to wrestle Grayson Waller next week, I believe. Then Adam Pearce has to pretend that this is some match that anyone wants to see. It clearly isn't. You know, I hate this kind of shit, right? It's like, how about Adam Pearce says, no, motherfucker, it's not going to be you versus Grayson Waller. It's going to be you versus Gunther, right? A match that people might actually care about because Gunther was a former world champion. But basically, Sheamus is like, I'd like to have a match with the biggest jobber on the roster. And then Adam Pearce has to look at him and say, sorry, Karrion Kross is on SmackDown now. And then he says, oh, who's the next biggest jobber that you got, right? Like, sorry, Finn Balor just lost a match. So then after one or two more jobbers, they settle on the fourth biggest jobber of all time, Grayson Waller, who I believe may have never won a singles match on WWE TV. NXT don't count, right? So now it's going to be Sheamus versus Grayson Waller. And it's like, anyone excited about that at all? Like, seriously. Like I don't give a shit about that at all, right? I'd rather see Grayson Waller be fired. You know, this guy hasn't contributed anything to this company. He's been there for like 8 years, accomplished absolutely nothing. You know, maybe I'll just switch him up. You know, like I say, it has Tensai written all over it. Maybe I'll start saying Obafemi has Grayson Waller written all over it too. They both won like the Iron Survivor thing, right? Which is basically the NXT version of the Andre the Giant Battle Royal because all it produces is jobbers. But anyways, it's neither here nor there, motherfucks. We'll see how that goes. After this, it's time for the main event, which is Rhea Ripley and Io Sky versus Julia and Roxanne Perez. Julia comes out looking like the Predator. You know what I mean? They have their match. The match is a botch fest, right? Rhea Ripley, who is like supposedly like the number one woman of all time in WWE history, or one of them at least, right? And Io Sky, who is the women's world champion, or like one of them at least, right? These two broads should be out there just like destroying everybody, right? But they have trouble with, these two NXT jobbers. Like, it's not like they're not even like two NXT legends, right? Like, Roxanne Perez was an NXT champion, but nobody cares, you know? And all of a sudden, she's friends with Julia for no reason. They probably don't understand each other, but all of a sudden, they're like a threat now to this like established female duo, right? Oh, speaking of females, Becky Lynch cut a promo, but I skipped that shit, motherfucks. Becky Lynch, for promos, is now on the ban list. As you can see, the ban list is expanding, as are my standards, motherfucks. So anyways, the match ends after like Rhea Ripley and Io Sky work together to whoop that ass. Rhea Ripley hits the Riptide on Julia and pins her monkey ass 1, 2, 3. While Io Sky did one thing that was good in this match. When Rhea Ripley was setting up for the Riptide, she went and she just kind of like jumped on top of Roxanne Perez, right? The idea being that like she's doing her job and preventing Roxanne Perez from breaking up the pin. I don't know why more people don't do this. You know, like it's really weird, but she did it and it added a sense of reality. So anyways, cuckolds, this match was not that good, and neither was the event, if we're being honest, right? It was kind of boring. Nothing happened that was new, right? A lot of things happened conceptually, but nothing new happened, right? So it's like Seth Rollins coming out and saying that CM Punk betrayed Paul Heyman is something that he said literally before WrestleMania. That's all he has in his mind for 2 months, you know? Get some new material, CUCK. But anyways, that being said, the hater's out of here, motherfucks. Tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's another video. So until then, the hater's going to leave you guys out with his new catchphrase, which goes a little something like this. 4 letters, 1 word, CUCK. Cuckolds.